Finishing up the bracelets, I'm going to show you one other piece of equipment that we have, and then how we finish off getting basically these two tail pieces cut off and making sure it looks nice, clean, and nothing sticking out that could potentially rub against somebody's skin. So first of all, we've got a rope cutter here, which is a real simple just on-off switch. It's a hot blade that gets extremely hot, so it will not only cut the rope, but it'll also melt the ends, so it's a nice clean melt. So it works out really well, but you obviously got to be careful when you're using it. So when we do the tail end of this, what I like to do is, this is where the pliers, the needle nose probably come in the most handy. And it takes a little bit of strength, but I'll grab this white cord and I grab this buckle and I pull it out as much as I can, and you'll actually see the buckle move like that when I pull it. And that's how you know you've pulled it enough. The buckle will actually curve up because I'm taking that cord and forcing that buckle to bend. So I do this because now when I cut this and I put the buckle back, that white piece will suck back into the bracelet and you'll never see it. So this is where you have to also be careful that you don't want the bracelet to touch anywhere on that hot blade. You only want the piece you're cutting to touch it. Otherwise you end up hitting the corner of the band and it basically ruins it because there's a big melted spot in it. So I'll keep holding it with the pliers. That keeps me from burning myself. I'll pull it nice and taut like this and get her nice and close. I'm going to put as close as I can without potentially worrying about hitting the blue part of the band, and it cuts right through it really simply, just like that. This is something obviously you want to have in a well ventilated area. You don't want to inhale the fumes. So actually outside is the best. I do it inside just for the lighting purposes tonight. So now that I've cut that nice and short, I still have a twist and a little bit of a curve in the buckle. By grabbing that buckle in the band now and pulling the buckle out the way it naturally was, that white piece has sucked in there underneath the blue and you can't see it. Sometimes you may end up with a little bit still sticking out. You can use these pliers to kind of get in there and push it under the blue, and sometimes you can even kind of squish it down. Like over here, if I see a little bit on this side I don't like, I can push it down and I can kind of move that knot just a little bit again to kind of cover it so that there's no end sticking out. So at this point there's no end sticking out of either of it, which means that stripe is all done. Looks nice, you don't see it, nothing sticking out that's going to rub on somebody's skin. Now the next and last piece is just taking these last two cords and finishing them off. So what I want to do is I want to cut it as kind of close to here. I usually will give myself about 1/8 of an inch just to be able to melt the two together, but I want to kind of cut it right about here. So again, if we come down here, again, I notice I have a bend in the bracelet, so I keep it all away from the blade except for the part I'm trying to cut. So I'm going to just push it over the top and it cuts right through there. So now I have two strands right there, both sticking out the same side. Now I just want to finish it. By finishing it, I'm going to touch the blade right to that side and it'll actually melt it so it shortens up, but it sears the two together and it gets it nice and tight against the bracelet so that it doesn't stick out and rub on anyone's skin. Again, here's the part where it's really easy to push too far and you could end up potentially melting another part of the band, and you don't want that because then it looks bad and it's not one that's usable. So by this, I now use the side of the blade instead of the top of the blade. So I'm going to come down right here, pulling the band out of the way so I don't potentially touch any of the rest of the band with the blade, and I'm going to just touch it there and you'll see right away it starts to smoke, and then I pull it up. I've now got both pieces melted together nice and flat. It's very hot still at this point and it will remain hot for about a minute, but once it's done then you can touch it. It's nice and smooth, there's no sharp edges, and once it's done essentially the band is done. So by closing it you can kind of take a look at what the final product will be. You can get an idea for the size. So again, that's kind of about a medium size right there. We can remeasure it just to kind of double check, especially if we're doing a lot of one particular size. You want to make sure that they're all within, you know, 1/4 inch of each other. So we can double check that if we need to, but for the most part that one's done. Alright, so we're all done. I'm going to kind of jump back and just hit a few key points just in case we kind of went through them a little quick last time. So again, melting the actual band towards the end is the one spot that after you put all the work into it is pretty easy to ruin the band if you put it on for too long, or if you accidentally let another part of the band touch it. It will melt it and it'll be a very visible defect, and then it will be unable to be used. So very important. And again, it's very easy to sear this last section for too long or to do it too close and hitting another part of the band. So it really kind of depends on how much you give yourself for length when you cut it. But if you have too much length and you sear the whole thing, you're going to end up with a big blob of melted plastic, which you don't want, or nylon there. So I just keep that nice little section of it and I sear it for about 1 second. So again, by holding it up there, touching it up to there for 1 second, you'll see it come flat. You'll see it become kind of flat with the band, but you really have to be careful. It's very easy to do it and stop and have to do it more than to do it too far, because once you've done it too far, you can't go back and redo it and you've potentially ruined the band. So start short, do just little bits at a time, and as long as it becomes flush and there's no sharp edges, that's usually about what we need. A few other things we'll just talk about with, again, kind of the pieces is, you know, we've got the two different buckles, so the same things of what we had before, what we call the male end. This is what we call the female end. And this is one band of two colors. We've got a couple other different options that we can show you. We have a 3-color band that we'll show you at a different time, but just to give you an idea of, you know, there's going to be multiple options here. This will be 3 colors here. It's all the same knots. Everything is just requires an extra minute or so of prep work to get your maroon and tan colors together and ready to go. But you'll notice it's really all about the same. So again, we finished the knots the same. If you look at the end of this one, again, seared together at the end, just like it is on this one, seared together at the end. So very similar there. Same way we started with the loop over the top, and on this one, loop over the top should always be on that female end. That's how we started with that first step, running that 3rd color through the middle of it, so it's not off to one side at all. We always hide that stripe on the inside so you can't see any of that stripe coming out from either end. There's no sharp pieces of cord or anything that are coming out that are potentially going to rub against somebody's skin. Again, just some tools to have, very simple needle nose. The finer the better, so again it allows you a little more dexterity than you would with a big giant pair. These seem to help out a lot with being able to get the knots really tight and also being able to get through the band as you want to pull a cord through as it gets smaller. Other than that, again, we'll send you basically product pre-cut, so you'll have the longer section is always going to be your main color. Finding that center, again, you put the 2 end pieces together, slide your finger down, and where those 2 come to the loop, that's going to be your center point. Buckles, the center stripe will always cut a little long so you have some extra to work with. That allows you to pull it out and cut it using the blade. And we will also make sure that you have several of these little pieces that, again, will just make it nice and easy. You can attach these things anywhere. So again, I've attached them over a simple door handle if that works. You can just rest it there and tie your band. Whatever you have available to you, all you need is just something that you can wrap it around and hold on to so that you can have your workspace in front of you. I can't think of anything else that's pertinent. Bye.